All right, let's talk about strategic planning. Ever look at some companies and just wonder how they seem to make all the right moves all the time? Well, guess what? It's not magic, it's a process. And today, we are going to break down that exact process, how winning organizations take these huge, ambitious visions and turn them into real, concrete, everyday actions.
I mean, we've all seen it, right? A company drops some game changing new product, or they expand into a new market, and it just feels like they absolutely cannot lose. So, is it just luck? Some random stroke of genius? Not really. Almost every single time, it's the result of a powerful, super deliberate process.
And that process? It's called strategic planning. You can think of it as the playbook that organizations use to look into the future, figure out what they want to be when they grow up, and then map out exactly how they're going to get there. Honestly, it's the real secret sauce behind every single one of those right moves.
Now, probably the easiest way to get your head around all this is to think of it like a pyramid with three distinct levels. The structure is so important because it shows you exactly how a big idea flows from the very top of a company all the way down to its daily operations. So, right at the very peak of that pyramid, you've got corporate strategy. This is the 30,000-foot view. This is where the top leadership is answering the biggest, most fundamental questions. What business are we even in? And maybe more importantly, what business should we be in? This decision sets the direction for the entire organization.
Okay, so moving one level down, we get to business strategy. Once that big picture corporate strategy is set, each individual part of the company, each business unit or division, needs its own game plan. This is where the question gets a lot more focused. How do we actually compete, and how do we win in our specific market? And finally, we get to the base of the pyramid. This is functional strategy. And let me tell you, this is where all that theory becomes action. It's where departments like marketing, finance, and operations create their own specific plans to make the business level strategy happen. This is where the rubber truly meets the road. All right, let's zoom back in on that top level, corporate strategy. We're starting again with that 30,000-foot view, where the biggest, most impactful decisions get made. So, at this corporate level, there are really four main paths a company can take. You can think of these as the major forks in the road, the grand strategies. They can choose integration, diversification, retrenchment, or divestment. And believe me, each one will dramatically shape the company's future. So let's kick things off with integration. This is all about a company expanding its control over its industry. With forward integration, they move closer to the customer. Think about a shoe manufacturer like Nike opening its own retail stores. Then there's backward integration, where they move the other way and take control of their suppliers. Imagine a restaurant chain deciding to buy and operate its own farm. But what if you're a massive company, a conglomerate like Samsung or GE, and you've got your hands in a bunch of different businesses? Well, that's where portfolio strategy comes in. It's literally about managing your different business units just like you would a stock portfolio, constantly deciding where to invest more and where you might need to cut your losses. A really classic tool for this is the BCG matrix. It helps you sort your businesses into four different categories. First up, you've got the stars. These are your businesses in high-growth markets where you're already a leader. The strategy here? It's simple. Pour in the resources and let them shine even brighter. Next up are the cash cows. Now, these are your reliable, totally established businesses in mature markets. They might not be growing like crazy anymore, but they generate a ton of steady, predictable cash. And where does that cash usually go? Well, you guessed it. It often gets funneled right back into your stars to fuel their growth. Then you have the question marks. These are your high-risk, high-reward gambles. They're operating in fast-growing markets, but you're not a leader yet. See, with the right investment, a question mark could become your next big star, but they could also fizzle out. This is where leadership has to make some really tough and really important calls. And finally, you have the dogs. These are businesses with low market share in slow-growing markets. They really aren't going anywhere, and they're tying up resources that could be used better somewhere else. So the usual move here is to sell them off or divest. A perfect example of this is when General Electric sold its famous appliance division to focus on its more profitable industrial businesses. So that's the big picture. But how does all this high-level, top-of-the-pyramid strategy actually get things done? Let's zoom in again and see how the plan gets put into action right there on the ground. You know, when you get down to the business level, it really boils down to three main ways you can compete.
First, you can try to be the cheapest. That's cost leadership. Think of a big discount store like Giant. Second, you can be different, offering something unique that people will pay more for, like Apple does. Or third, you can focus on a very specific, narrow niche and just totally own it, the way Ferrari does with supercars. And this brings us right to the final piece of the puzzle, functional strategy. So let's say your business strategy is differentiation. Well, then your marketing team's job is to build a premium brand. Your production team's job is to create high-quality, innovative products. See? Every single department has a specific role to play in bringing that business strategy to life. Okay, we've covered a lot of theory here, but how does this all connect and work together in the real world? Let's walk through a quick case study to see the entire strategic pyramid in action, from top to bottom. So let's imagine a company called Fresh Bite Foods. They make frozen meals. At the corporate level, the leadership decides they need to grow, to move beyond their core business. So they choose a diversification strategy. The big decision? They're going to jump into a whole new market, healthy snacks. Okay, now let's drop down to the business level. The new healthy snacks division has to figure out how it's going to compete. Are they going to try to be the cheapest snack on the shelf? Nope. They choose a differentiation strategy. They're going to focus on being premium, using organic ingredients and eco-friendly packaging to make themselves stand out from the crowd. And here, right here, is where it all comes together at the functional level. The marketing department doesn't just randomly buy ads. They create a very specific plan that supports the differentiation strategy, like running influencer campaigns on TikTok and Instagram. And they have clear goals, or KPIs, like reaching 500,000 customers. Every single action is tied back to that bigger picture. So, here's the bottom line, the most crucial point of all this. A great strategic plan isn't some dusty document that just sits on a shelf somewhere. It's a living, breathing roadmap that connects the CEO's big vision to what an employee does on a Tuesday afternoon. It's the thing that makes sure everyone in the entire company is pulling in the exact same direction. And as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with a thought. You know, these principles don't just apply to huge corporations. They apply to your career, to a side project you're passionate about, maybe even your life. So, what's your big picture? How are you planning to compete and win? And what's the very first step you're going to take to make it all happen?